Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Likable Leaders on LinkedIn Live. We are also live today on Facebook and YouTube. And I'm excited to be back with you guys. It's been a few weeks. I took a little vacation with my family, and now I am back with a really terrific guest that came to me via my fabulous wife and business partner. Joining me in just a moment is Shellye Archambeau, one of high-tech's first female African-American CEOs. She's been frequently featured in Forbes, the New York Times, Business Insider, and a whole lot more. She was an executive at IBM and the CEO of Blockbuster.com. And she joined a then struggling Silicon Valley startup, MetricStream, which is now, of course, thanks in great part to Shellye, a recognized global leader in governance, risk, and compliance software solutions. She's currently a Fortune 500 board member. She holds board seats at Verizon, Nordstrom, Roper Technologies, and I'm going to mess this one up.
Okta.
Okta. Okay,
Okta.
fantastic. I did not mess it up. And Shellye is the author of a brand new, really exciting book that I have been fortunate enough to get my hands on a little early. Oh, I can't hold it up. I'm going to try to hold it up like this. It's called Unapologetically Ambitious. Take risks, break barriers, and create success on your own terms. Welcome to Likable Leaders, Shellye Archambeau. Great to have you here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, Dave. Been looking forward to it.
So I guess the first question I have to ask that I've been asking everyone for the last few months of the show, because the world, has changed so much, right, before our very eyes. How has the pandemic impacted you and some of the businesses that you sit on the boards of? What have been the I guess the top the good things that have come out of it, and the not so good things that have come out of it, as far as you see?
Sure. So I would definitely say roller coaster is definitely the right definition. As COVID first hit, and we were in kind of that March, April timeframe, serving on the boards that I do and advising the companies they advise, everybody was in, oh my God, right? What do we do to kind of manage this crisis, get our arms around it, make sure our employees are safe and customers are safe and right shareholders are handled and all those things. And then got that taken care of. And then it was like, all right, now we need to start figuring out what we need to do to make sure our strategy, right, still makes sense for the future, et cetera. So I worked on that. And then everything really exploded with regards to the racial injustice and racial equity. And so then it was back to, okay, what are we doing? How do we need to focus? Are the changes we need to make, et cetera? So that created the next right kind of focus. And then companies started putting in place what they were going to do, et cetera. And now, depending upon where you are, I'm in California. We have fires everywhere. And so it's one of those things where, okay, you're supposed to only do things outside, but the air quality is terrible. So you have to be inside. So anyway, it's been a crazy time for sure.
It's 2020 is the year that just really continues to test our resilience. I think it's really been wild. I am going to ask you about your experience as a Black woman on boards throughout this Black Lives Matter movement in a moment. But I forgot to say to our viewers that you can win Shellye's book. So I hope that you guys comment every time you post a comment on our live stream on LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube. You are eligible to win a copy of Shellye's upcoming really awesome book, Unapologetically Ambitious. Take risks, break barriers, and create success on your own terms. We're going to choose our first winner in just a moment. So get those comments in and get those questions in. As always, I will turn to you guys, our audience, for questions that you have for Shellye in a little bit. But first, as promised, so at the risk of kind of putting you on the spot on this, I have to, corporate America is so still, in my humble opinion, so much old white men. Have you faced like these moments where folks turn to you in a boardroom, physical or virtual, and say, okay, well, what do we do about this, as if you have all the solutions? Or have you had, I guess, a better experience? I mean, what has your experience been like as this, shockingly, as part of a shockingly low percentage of you know, women in the boardroom, Black folks in the boardroom, and women of color in the boardroom, right? You're sort of part of frankly the smallest demographic group in the boardroom, and you've been in that position in a year and at a time where the light has shined brighter than ever before on the lack of diversity in the boardroom and in management positions, and the racism that continues to perpetrate and permeate so many companies. So what has that experience been like?
So I'll tell you, Dave, gosh, how do you put that into a nutshell, right? But let me talk about it in a couple pieces. So one, I am fortunate, actually, and it's not by accident, but all the boards that I sit on, all the public boards that I sit on, indeed have diversity of women as well as people of color. Every board I'm on has at least 2, if not 3, African Americans, and has at least 3 or more women on the board. Some are 50%. So now, again, that's all intentional. The boards didn't all look that way necessarily when I first got there. But what I will tell you is, yes, they reached out, and yes, to get, perspective, advice, et cetera, as you would expect. But what surprised me probably the most was the number of people that frankly reached out that I don't have direct relationships with, but were looking for perspective, et cetera. The good news is the percentage of times I got tell me the answer, or was asked, please tell me the answer, versus help me understand. I got more help me understand than answer this for me, which is, I think, actually good news. And what I'm seeing and what actually gives me, what should I say, makes me cautiously optimistic, is the fact that businesses are really engaging this time. During the civil rights movement, they really didn't engage. They sat on the sidelines, said, this is a government issue, right? They'll have to figure it out. But now they're actually engaging. But time will tell. Time will tell in terms of what changes actually are made. But I am cautiously optimistic based upon what I'm seeing right now.
That's great to hear. Really, frankly, all of it. So I will join you in my cautious optimism for that. Okay, let's jump into the book. So you have this book coming out, which is really exciting. It's not an easy time to launch a book, but 2020 is not an easy time for anything. So there you go. Tell me a little bit about what made you want to write this book, and why now?
Absolutely. So, Dave, I've tried my entire career to be accessible. I'm one of the few people, I actually respond to everything: LinkedIn, email, Twitter, et cetera. And I always have. Now, as I got more and more responsibility, I couldn't always meet with everybody that wanted to meet, right? Or talk to everybody that wanted to talk. And I thought, one day when I get to phase 2, I'm just going to write it down so that I can share some of the lessons, perspectives, strategies, what worked to actually help me increase and improve my odds of actually getting what I wanted out of life. And so that's what this book is about. It's really about sharing a lot of my experience and what I've learned to help improve the odds, because it was very clear to me very early that the odds were not in my favor to get anything, frankly, that I wanted out of life. So I had to be super intentional. So the book is about trying to share that at scale so that others have the ability to contribute, because it just irritates the heck out of me that people don't have the opportunity to contribute sometimes even half of what they're capable of. Right. Not because they're not hardworking and not because they're not ambitious, but because of all the other challenges that they face in trying to get to opportunities.
I love the intentionality. We have our first winner. So congratulations to Michelle Eldridge of Michigan. Michelle Eldridge, you will be one of the very first people on the planet to get your hands on Unapologetically Ambitious by Shellye Archambeau. Congratulations, Michelle. And if you haven't won yet, what are you waiting for? You need to comment right away. By the way, the book, I'm assuming, is available pre-order on Amazon. Is that a safe bet?
That is a safe bet. Pre-order on Amazon or your local bookstore. Always nice to support local bookstores. And it actually ships. It's available on October 6th.
Terrific. Okay, so back to the book for a moment. Give me, if you could, so the I guess the lazy person's question here. What are the sort of 2 or 3 biggest so in the books that I write and in the books that I read, Shellye, I'm all about actionable takeaways, because I think what a lot of folks frankly struggle with on both the reading and the writing side is like high level stuff that's might be very smart, but it's people read it and they're like, well, what do I do now? And so tell me a little bit about, if you could share 1 or 2, 3 max key takeaways in terms of action items that folks will get from the book, that would be super helpful and valuable.
Absolutely. And let me just say, that was the whole focus of the book. So the book is chock full of here's what you can go do tomorrow, right, as a result. So let me talk about one. One is imposter syndrome. Most of us actually suffer imposter syndrome at some point or another. And so, right, and some of us do a lot, right? Well, I fought imposter syndrome my entire career. As a matter of fact, studies show that women experience it even more than men, but people of color experience it even more than that because of all that goes on in the world. So I actually talk about how to handle it, what I did to overcome it, the key steps. First is realizing, first of all, everybody feels this way. So you're not alone, it's not personal, right? 2, when people give you a job or invite you into the room or make you part of a team, believe them. They did it because they believe that you are capable and you will add value. So believe them, right? 3, I tell people all the time, fake it until you make it, right? I mean, you got the job, act like you know what you're doing. Eventually you will. So that can also help. And then I also tell people, get cheerleaders. Cheerleaders meaning, yeah, real, rah, go Shellye, go Dave. I mean, cheerleaders, people who will remind you when you're feeling not that great and not secure, you're feeling right, like you can't possibly do it, that will remind you of all of your strengths and capabilities and how good you really are. You need those people because the world is telling us all the time how we're not good enough. So you need people that are propping you up. So those are just a quick couple things.
I love it. I've heard a few of those things with respect to imposter syndrome before. I hadn't heard the believe them, and I love that. And I'm going to use that for myself. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Much appreciated. Okay, we're going to turn to likable leadership principles in just a moment. We're also going to take your questions, the audience, if you're watching at home or at work, but I'm thinking that people are pretty much watching at home these days. But before I do that, I have to ask, because Blockbuster is such an interesting story, what was your experience like there? And what, if anything, could Blockbuster have done to remain relevant and in the sort of large company that it once was?
Well, my time at Blockbuster actually ended up being relatively short because I realized that they really didn't get it. What could they have done? They had the opportunity to actually come together with Netflix and go conquer the world. And that opportunity happened while I was there, and they passed on it, which is why my time with them was short.
Wow.
What could they have done? Take advantage of the opportunity that was in front of them.
Wow, that's exciting and juicy, and I'm tempted to ask more, but I will. I don't. I will.
It's in the book. I talk about it in the book.
You got to read the book. Okay, that's a perfect example then. Perfect. In fact, I'm gonna right after this interview, I'm gonna personally open it up to that point and get the dirt on that, because that is super interesting. And as a student of business, I'm just always so curious how some companies. I had my very first advisory board meeting. I had a former CMO of Polaroid say to Mark Zuckerberg's dad ended up on my board. We were friends, and it was the day that Facebook bought Instagram. And so former CMO of Polaroid says, right before my meeting starts, says, how does it feel that your son just spent $1 billion on a company without any revenue at all? And he says, I don't know. I trust my son knows what he's doing. And that purchase, of course, ended up being one of the best purchases in history. And meanwhile, Kodak could have built Instagram and been, and things would have been very, very different. So go figure. All right, I have a second winner Richard Nee in New Jersey. Congratulations, Richard Nee in New Jersey. You are our second
Hey,
winner.
Richard.
Unapologetically Ambitious from Shellye Archambeau. And we will choose one more winner at the end of the show. But first, I'm going to pull up, as we do with all of our guests, the likable leadership pyramid here. And we've got the 11 principles of likable business: listening, storytelling, passion, teamwork, surprise and delight, responsiveness, simplicity, authenticity, transparency, adaptability, and gratefulness. And Shellye, I'm going to ask you in a moment for the likable leadership principles that resonate the most with you. But first, I'd love to know from our audience, and we will choose our final grand prize winner. We're going to give away Shellye's book and one of my books to our grand prize winner, who shares the likable leadership principle that resonates the most with you, our audience. So if you're watching at home, post in the comments which one of these principles resonates the most with you as a leader or executive. And Shellye, I'm going to ask you that same question now. Which of these speak to you the most as a leader? You've already mentioned one.
Yeah, I was going to say that actually, I so believe in your pyramid, first of all, Dave. So I'm going to start, the first one, gratefulness. I mean, I talked about it. The reason that I wrote the book, the reason that I answer everybody's, LinkedIn's, emails, et cetera, is because I didn't achieve everything I achieved all by myself. I achieved it because so many people along the way helped me. And I am so grateful for that I want to make sure, right, that I am passing that down. My style for leadership is servant leadership, which is all about helping my team be successful because I'm grateful that they're part. So I think grateful, absolutely. Second, and I could go through them all, but I'll say second is just the authenticity, transparency. What you see is what you get with me. Dave asked me, just so you don't know this, before we got on the show, is there anything I should stay away from and asking? And I said, no, I'm totally, ask me whatever, right? If I'm not comfortable, I'll tell you that. But what you see is what you get. And I think that's so important in a leader so that people can develop trust. And gosh, the other one I would put, it's hard to pick the next best one, probably teamwork. You can't accomplish anything by yourself. Full stop. You just can't. People who tell you they did it all by themselves are not telling the truth. All right. Yeah. It takes a team, and the power. I believe that a team that comes together, a strong team, will beat a team of independent greatness every day of the week. Because just because you have a bunch of independent people who are great, putting them together doesn't mean they can work as a team. And I'll take people who work as a team to go to battle with any day of the week. So teamwork.
Love that. By the way, folks at home might be surprised to know there's a pretty good percentage of people when I ask that question pre-interview who say, yeah, please don't ask me about this and fill in the blank. So Shellye's answer about authenticity is authentic, which I love. I am shocked, Shellye, by how few leaders embrace this the way I would think they would at this point in the game. But I guess it's still a tricky one for some folks. I love what you said about teamwork. And of course, for me, the reason that gratefulness is at the top of the pyramid is that ultimately is the trait from which everything else, for me, flows.
I fully agree with that.
So we do have a couple questions from the audience. If you have a question for Shellye or for me, please post it, and I will get to them if we can here. So Sean wants to know, and Sam, I think you can stop sharing the pyramid, though I like to stare at it. I'd rather see Shellye and her beautiful book in the background. There you go. Thanks to Sam from the Apprentice team who helps out with our Likable Leaders show. So Sean Myers is asking, was there ever a point when you stopped feeling like an imposter? I mean, I think likely what you said resonated with a lot of folks that are watching, because I know it resonated with me. And I feel like throughout my career, I've always thought like, well, maybe at this point I won't feel like an imposter. And it's like, if anything, it's almost gotten worse because I tell myself like, why are you in this room now? Like you don't belong there, you know? And so for me, at least, it really hasn't gone away. How about you? Is there ever a point where you're like, wow, I totally sort of, I have followed all my principles and I'm there. I feel totally comfortable.
So the short answer is, I don't think you ever get to that point if you are learning. I tell people all the time, if you don't feel uncomfortable, several times, at least in a year, but at least a couple times a month, then odds are you're actually not learning anything. Because if we feel totally comfortable, it means we got it, right? Been there, done that, got it. I'm a person that I always want to be learning. So do I always put myself therefore in uncomfortable positions, which means imposter syndrome will creep in? The answer is I try. I try. So I don't think it actually is a goal of mine to overcome imposter syndrome. The key is to learn how to deal with it. But don't ever, if you ever get to the point where you feel like you are totally comfortable all the time, I would tell you, get uncomfortable. Push yourself, because there's more that you can do. There's more that you can learn.
Love it. So basically, Sean, you got to embrace the imposter syndrome, because it means that you are pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and stretching yourself and learning, to Shellye's point. And, when we stop learning, what's the point? I mean, to me, but so I love that. And I'm going to take that advice too, and just continue to push, and even when it's uncomfortable, and frankly, especially when it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Jalen wants to know, he says he's a young Black entrepreneur. What advice would you give him, kind of starting out right now as an entrepreneur in these crazy times?
Okay, so first of all, I actually think right now, for all of the challenge, it's actually a great time to start a business, because whenever you go through crisis, people are more open to new approaches, new business models, new ways of doing things, etc. So it is a good time to start a business. My biggest advice is, number one, realize that whatever you're doing is going to cost more money and take you longer than you think it will, because it always does. Two, it's all about the team. It's more important to have the best talent, the best capability, and just have one of them than have three people that are mediocre. It'll make a huge difference in terms of driving whatever it is that you're trying to drive. Be resilient. Be resilient. Half the battle is just sticking with it as you go forward. So those are a few things.
Love it. Resilience and team A players. And man, the first thing you said is it's such a bummer, because it is always true, needing more time and money. But I wish I had known that then, what I know now. So excellent advice. Okay, we have a couple more questions here. John Berry wants to know, I'm not sure this, and John, if you can be a little bit more specific, although we'll just choose to interpret this how we see fit. Has the workplace become more positive? So that would presume that the workplace wasn't so positive, and it's very, very broad, admittedly. So I'm not sure if John had something specific in mind there. But do you think overall the workplace? I'm going to take it this way. Is it a positive thing? Is work from home a positive thing, do you think, or is it a net positive or a net negative?
Wow. So I really think it depends upon your circumstance. If your kids are grown, or at least, teenagers and up, then working from home is probably okay, because you can focus what you need to focus on, because they can handle themselves. If you're frankly a parent with young kids and you're trying to work from home, and oh, by the way, if you happen to have small space, I think it's super, super challenging and really hard, especially now with school remote, the whole bit. So, I think there are people that are actually loving it. If you're more of an introvert, I think working from home and all is great. If you're like me, I get my energy from people. And frankly, working from home, not so great.
Right.
So it really depends, I think, on your circumstance and your personality as to whether or not this is a positive and or a negative. But overall, I really feel for the people right now that are trying to juggle everything and have all of that. Young kids, small space, right? Not a lot of help because of COVID. It's really hard.
Thank you. Okay, we have time for one more question, then we're going to choose a grand prize winner. If you have not posted a comment yet, post a comment and your chance to win one of the very first copies on the planet of Unapologetically Ambitious from Shellye Archambeau. And I'm going to throw in one of my books as well. We will throw in, I'll get into the problem is with my background, I'm not good at sharing. Likeable social media right here. Okay, when was the time when you thought about quitting, and was there a time ever when you thought about quitting, and how did you rebound?
Okay, so absolutely in terms of quitting a job, not quitting from the standpoint of giving up on my goal. I never, I never, I never had the view of giving up my goal. My goal was to be a CEO, and I never gave up on that. Now, was I going to give up on jobs? Yeah, I did, and I ended up. Sometimes I actually did leave. You know, IBM. I ended up in a situation where I didn't see the opportunity. Then, you know, like Blockbuster, I talked about. I left Blockbuster, but that was because I felt our visions for the future were different. So I would say it's okay to make a change, but don't give up on your goal. Just come at it a different way.
Got it. Love it. Give up on a job, maybe even give up on a venture. Do not give up on an overall goal. I love that. Okay, my final winner. Oh, that was, by the way, from Bola Panta. Apologies if I messed up your name. Bola Panta. Thank you for that question. She actually said, or he or she actually said to both of you. So I'll just very briefly say that I would say similarly. I am a big fan of persistence. Persistence almost made it up to that pyramid. I think persistence is really valuable. So for me, the reason I typically sort of don't really even think about quitting is just you never know when the next opportunity will be the one. And you know, I tell a story about a target I had. Burger King was on my target list when I worked for Disney. I called them 36 times. The 37th time I called, they picked up and ended up doing business with me. So if I had quit on, you know, 10, 20, 30, like just about everyone else on the planet would, you know, I wouldn't have built a relationship and made money and the whole 9 yards. So for me, it's really all about persistence. Okay, hold up that book one more time for me, please, Shellye. And our grand prize winner of the day is Lisa Baez. Congratulations, Lisa Baez. If you won either Lisa just now or earlier, please send me a message with your address, of course, and we will get those books out to you. Shellye Archambeau, Unapologetically Ambitious, available for pre-order everywhere and on sale everywhere in October 6th. Thank you so much for joining me today. And here's to the great success for you. Thank you, Sam, as always, for helping to make this show happen. And thanks most of all to you all, the viewers, for tuning in. It's for you that we do this, and it's because of you that we can do this. And until next time, have a super likable day.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Dave. Thanks, everyone.